Ready to go. Registration for party candidates ends today for the upcoming general elections, but the noise continues. What's at the center of debate? Threats continue. North Korea is far from ceasing its military threats, conducting a series of missile tests this month and amping up its rhetoric. Low rates. Major economies stay on the dovish trend with record low rates. Concerns of a currency war loom. Where does this put Korea? And troubled history. Korea and Japan relations are again in question after Tokyo unveiled new textbooks with distorted facts. Is there a way out? Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jang-han. Let's meet our panelists. Professor Shin Sang-yup is with us again. Great to have you back. And Professor Park Hee-rak joins us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Let's get straight into our first topic of discussion. Today was the last day of candidate registration for the upcoming general elections. We saw fierce competition for party nominations until the last minute. What are some of the recurring problems with elections, and are there solutions in sight? So there's been a lot of controversy regarding the whole nomination process. What are your views of the entire process and how parties have dealt with it?
Well, when I give my impression about the nomination process so far, it's not very desirable shape, I think. As we know, very well these days, we cannot find any pledges introduced by the political parties. Well, I think they are making fierce competition to get the nominations. I think this should be changed. Otherwise, I think the people cannot make right decisions which is very important for the future of the Korean politics as well as Korean economy, I think.
What do you think, Professor Park?
Yes, I think they selected the candidates at last. And I think also this is kind of one step forward for the matured democracy in South Korea, even though there has been many controversies and turmoil. But they, I think, succeeded to exclude some kind of extremists or some ungently people from the nomination. And at the same time, I think that we have very fixed rules for the election. So, all the candidates know what the election rules is. But the problem is that there's no kind of fixed rules on the nomination or kind of selection of candidates in the parties. I think that if we kind of set the rule later for the nomination, I think we will have a better democracy in the future.
So what were the sources of conflict and controversy in this year's nomination process?
I think regardless of political parties, in the ruling party and in the opposition parties, I think they are talking about who are supporting for the president and who are not supporting for the president and the government. And in the opposition party, then who are supporting for the former president, Roh Moo-hyun, and who are not. I think this is like some conflicts of so-called political frictions. I think this can be pointed out as one of the fundamental causes for such a noisy nomination process we have. But I think, as I said before, the most important thing should be the pledges. How they can contribute to improve the quality of life of the people. It should be the number one criteria factors. It should be regarded as the most important factors by the political parties and by the voters, I think. But as I said before, at the moment, when I look at the situation happening, well, I feel very regret.
I think voters are frustrated because candidates so far have been too focused on winning these party nominations that they fail to lay out their key policies or make clear their campaign pledges. What other problems do we see under the current system?
I don't think the system has significant problems. I think the people have some problems. Especially, I think that we have two kind of serious problems. The first one is that regionalism. That means that if certain people are nominated as a candidate in the certain area for the certain party, he will be certainly elected. So he may not need to kind of develop any policies which can attract the people's attention. And the second problem would be we may be in a kind of confusion. What kind of representatives we are going to select? That means, are we going to select the one who can contribute to our national interest, or are we going to select the one who can contribute to our regional interest? Right now, there are many kind of candidates who want to contribute much on the regional interest instead of national interest. So if they want to select the candidates who is contribute much to regional interest, they may not want to make a kind of national level policy. They always want to improve the quality of people, and sometimes it may not compatible with the national interest. But one thing I would like to mention is that the Central Party, I think, showed one positive step, is that the party asked the candidates to make a pledge to keep their campaign promises, and if they do not keep their promises, they should return the kind of yearly payment to the country. So I don't know whether it will be kept or not, but it would be a one kind of positive step.
Yeah, campaign pledges, the key with them is fulfilling them once they're elected. But why do we keep seeing the same problem over and over in every election? Is it a problem with our political culture?
I think both political culture and political system itself have been a kind of some obstacles for us to achieve the very matured the election culture and election system. Let me tell you one thing as an example. You know, as far as I know, the Central Party, regardless of whether they are the ruling party or opposition parties, the Central Party have very huge influences or power in some sense in the selecting the candidates or in nominating the candidates. And in every corner of the works conducted within the political party frame, the Central Party has had too much, I think, excessive influences and power. So as we can see the case at the ruling party, Central Party, there has been some serious conflict between the political party leaders and the head of the candidate registration committee about the way of the nominating the candidates.
They are from different factions.
Yes, totally different the approaches, simply because they came from the different political factions. So I think this is directly related to political system itself. By diversifying distributing the power to the regional political parties, I think we can, to some degree, prevent us from seeing such a kind of very noisy nomination procedure. And secondly, we have been very familiar with the political culture, which has been inherited over the last 5 decades, I think. If I know the very powerful person inside the political party, I could get a nomination, or I can have a seat in the National Assembly, those kind of things. I think that it should be more systemized. Otherwise, then we will not be able to avoid such a kind of noisy nomination procedure, I think.
Well, candidate registration is over. We now have about 2.5 weeks left till Election Day. Let's hope it's not too late for candidates to help voters make informed decisions. In the meantime, North Korea has been stepping up its saber rattling. Leader Kim Jong-un is also repeating his nuclear rhetoric. Here's a look at some of the latest developments on this front.
Following North Korea's 4th nuclear test, the international community has stepped up pressure on Pyongyang, but this has not prevented the leadership from amping up its military threats. The North has continued to carry out a series of missile tests in the East Sea. Especially on the 18th, it launched a Nodong missile for the first time in 2 years, escalating military tensions. The UN Security Council has called on the North to immediately halt these provocations and adopted a statement condemning its actions. Meanwhile, 38 North, a website run by the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University, citing satellite images from this month, said active movement around North Korea's nuclear test site Punggye-ri has been detected, suggesting Pyongyang may conduct yet another nuclear test. Seoul's Unification Ministry has also said all possibilities are on the table, including another nuclear test.
지도부가 핵실험을 공언한 바가 있기 때문에 지도부의 결심에 따라서는 언제든지 핵실험을 실시할 수 있다 이렇게 보고 있습니다.
Coming up next month on the 15th is North Korea's founder Kim Il-sung's birthday, and scheduled for May is the country's 7th Party Congress. With important events on the calendar, many believe Pyongyang will likely unleash another act of defiance, and with this, the international community will need to look for new ways to step up pressure on the regime.
Professor Park, we'll turn to you for more on this. Now, North Korea's saber-rattling or nuclear rhetoric is nothing new, but it seems to have risen in frequency and intensity lately. Why do you think that is?
It is not easy for us to actually understand the real intention or mindset of North Korean leaders, but many people believe that North Korea used this kind of rhetoric in fear of very strong combined military power of South Korea and the United States, because whenever we conduct combined exercises, North Korea always responded like this. But at the same time, I think that Kim Jong-un may have some intention to consolidate the people's support of him. That means that he would like to demonstrate that he has a strong will and kind of guts to defy the international sanctions and United States and demonstrate that I am the leader of North Korea and please follow me. And thirdly, I would like to emphasize that biggest kind of event of North Korea, which is the birthday of Kim Il-sung, is at the corner. So I think that it is a kind of gesture to boost the morale of the people before that birthday. So I think that we can kind of caution about the rhetoric, but at the same time that we should not disregard the real capability of North Korea, because we need to be prepared for the worst case scenario all the time.
Well, North Korea now claims that it has succeeded in miniaturizing nuclear warheads to fit on ballistic missiles. The thing about Pyongyang is that it's hard to tell how serious it really is, whether it is bluffing or whether there is actually some truth to these claims. What do you think?
I think that there could be some exaggerations at the statements of the Kim Jong-un, but I think that there's not kind of much discrepancies between facts and Kim Jong-un's announcement. First, Kim Jong-un said that North Korea succeeded to make its nuclear weapons small and light enough to be delivered by ballistic missiles. And many experts believe that it is kind of about time for North Korea to have that. And some American scientists said that North Korea may have succeeded to make it smaller to the 200 to 300 kilograms. And secondly, Kim Jong-un said that it succeeded to have that thermonuclear reaction power. And many experts believe that through the fourth nuclear test, North Korea may have succeeded to have that boosted fission bomb, which may be made through the thermonuclear reaction process. And thirdly, Kim Jong-un showed the model of small nuclear weapons. So even though Kim Jong-un used some kind of strong words, but I think that his declaration or his threat may be based on kind of facts rather than the bluffing.
Now, Kim Jong-un has also said that Pyongyang will soon conduct tests of its nuclear warheads. Does that mean that a fifth nuclear test is imminent?
I think that that is kind of encouragement to the military and the scientists to do their best to improve the quality and quantity of nuclear weapons instead of ordering another immediate test. And I also read reports at the 38 North homepage, and it said that North Korea cleaned up the leakages by the nuclear test of January 6th, and North Korea succeeded to seal it, not to leak any radioactive rays to the outside. That means that if North Korea wants to conduct another nuclear test, it can use the other tunnels in the northern portion. But personally, I don't think North Korea is prepared to do another test. That means that through the fourth test, they proved that they developed at least boosted fission bomb. And the next test should be to demonstrate that they developed a real hydrogen bomb. And I don't think North Korea is becoming close to the hydrogen bomb in a so kind of rapid way. So I think this 38 North's homepage and the kind of statement of Kim Jong-un should not be understood as the kind of sign of immediate test, but as a kind of encouragement possibility of next test which could occur in 1 year later, or 2 years later, or 3 years later.
Well, nevertheless, the South Korean military says it will remain on high alert. On Monday, Seoul and Washington held their first high-level talks exclusively on North Korea sanctions. So the message from that meeting is that Seoul and Washington are fully committed to the thorough implementation of sanctions. But this close partnership, which is also evident in the ongoing joint military drills, may end up provoking North Korea even more, don't you think?
Yeah, I understand the points. If we demonstrate our strong will and posture, it can provoke the North Korea. But at the same time, that I think that this is a very serious situation. North Korea may have developed about 20 nuclear weapons, and it probably is capable of delivering these weapons to South Korea, and North Korea did not show any signs going back to the negotiation table. So if we cannot stop the further development of nuclear weapons at this point, North Korea can make more weapons, and it is harder to kind of denuclearize the North Korea. So I think that the United States and South Korea, and with, I think, Japan, this may be the last kind of opportunity to stop North Korea. So I think that they want to muster all the possible means to pressure North Korea on the nuclear issues, and want to make the North Korea into the negotiating table for the denuclearization. And right now, it seems to be a chicken game. And the chicken game also has risk, we know. But at the same time, if we stop this chicken game, we may not have any chance to make North Korea give up its nuclear weapons. We should have some kind of balance between these benefits and risks of chicken game.
Well, some say Seoul is running out of options with its North Korea strategy, though. They're questioning whether these hardline policies like the Kaesong shutdown or unilateral sanctions could actually contribute to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
One thing we need to remember is that we at least conducted the soft policy for more than kind of 10 years by the name of Sunshine Policy. But we found out that North Korea developed its nuclear weapons during that time. So it is kind of necessary for us to change this hardline policy. We don't know whether this policy would work. But the important thing is, if all the people, South Korean people and the peoples in the world are united to pressure North Korea on agreeing to the denuclearization, I think we may achieve some. So the important thing is not which policy is best one, but how can we make this policy effective and successful.
Well, for now, I guess we can only hope that the policy will be effective and successful. In the meantime, in financial news, the U.S. Federal Reserve decided last week to freeze its benchmark lending rate while hinting at a more dovish monetary policy. Key rates now stand at historic lows in Japan and many European countries as well. There are concerns brewing over a potential currency war. How does this all affect Korea? So we've seen loose monetary policies and even negative interest rates prevail around the world. How has this affected Korea's financial markets and the real economy as a whole?
Well, I think I have to explain about the negative interest rate policy, what it is. It means that between the central bank and the commercial banks, there should be some transactions. So if the commercial banks want to put the money into saving account at the central bank, they used to get some interest rates. But the negative interest rate policy means that instead of getting some money in the form of interest rate, they should pay some money to the central bank.
Right.
Then what is the main objectives of this policy? That means that to provide more money to the market by encouraging the commercial banks to provide more loans at a cheaper interest rates to the public, that means the government want to revitalize depressed national economy. So that is the main objective. So the European Central Bank adopted negative interest rate policy. And other several European countries, Sweden, Swiss, and Denmark, they already accepted the negative interest policy. Even in Asia, Japan
Right.
did it. But the problem is this: through this kind of efforts, depressed economy should be revitalized. But the problem is that we cannot see any signs showing the revitalization of the depressed economy. That is the case in Europe. That is the case even in Japan. Actually, even the stock market has been destroyed, hit the bottom. So we can say that the efforts to control or stabilize the exchange rate or the currency value through the monetary policy has been some limited in its function. So in fact, because of the negative interest rate policy, Korea has some burden. We have taken the very low interest rate policy, but comparing with other countries' policy, the Bank of Korea and the Korean officials are very seriously consider whether we have to lower interest rate further. I think this is a kind of burden we are facing. And another one, in fact, the most important thing for us at the moment is how to revitalize our domestic economy. So which means that we have to maintain our currency value to the degree good enough to make our industries to keep its competitiveness in the global market, particularly price competitiveness. Otherwise, if we fail to maintain the currency value to that value, I think we will not be able to avoid so-called disastrous situation in our economy.
So there are obvious side effects to low or negative interest rates. Are there sectors then that can actually benefit from low or negative interest rates?
On the short-term basis, yes, there are some sectors which could gain some benefits. Some industrial sectors can use the money at a cheap the interest rates. But as a whole, I think through the monetary policy, the government has serious difficulties in keeping the currency value to desirable level. So that is the problem. And then definitely, from the Japanese experience, situations they have, they still have a strong Japanese yen. It is a serious negative factor for the Japanese industries to increase their exports. Particularly the countries like Korea and Japan, we have the economic structure which are very heavily rely on the external trade, which means that to maintain the dynamism in our domestic economy, we have to increase our exports from Japan and Korea. But because of the currency value, if we lose our competitive advantages in the global market, well, how we can overcome the financial or economic difficulties we have? So the most important thing is that to maintain the exchange rate, currency value to the appropriate level, which is the most important thing for us to overcome the economic difficulties we are facing.
So there's growing talk of a possible currency war because so many countries are adopting negative interest rate policies now, and they're devaluing their currencies, whether by intention or not. Should we really be worried?
I think so, because that we can find some situations, showing the government intervention in the financial market. Well, the excessive government intervention in financial market is not allowed in international the community. We have rules and regulations set by the WTO and IMF and IBLD. And then, but because most of the countries are suffering from serious crisis, so for those countries to revitalize their economy is very, very important. So the question they have to find an answer is that how they could revitalize, promote the depressed economy. Well, most countries, even though there are some differences in the degree, but they have to increase their exports, or they have to promote the domestic market. Well, there are many options available to the government. But in case of Korea, we have to increase our exports. Any national government want to increase their exports, the currency value is very important.
Right.
So each national government try to control or maintain the appropriate currency value. How? Intervene in the market. So even the USA government, actually Bennett, Hatch, and Copper bill was maybe adopted. The nickname of this one is the Super 301 in financial market, which means that if any country try to control the currency value by intervening in a market, financial market, the USA government will take some retaliatory action. How? Impose some tariffs on the national governments. I think this is one of the proofs how seriously national government are considering to maintain their currency value. I think this is very important. This is common problems for many national governments.
Well, the U.S. is getting ready to enact that bill, the Bennett-Hatch-Carper Amendment, under which Washington can punish, as you said, trading partners suspected of tampering with foreign exchanges. There's been concern that Korea might be its first target.
There's a rumor, there are some reports that Korea will be the first victim. I think there are some possibility, yes. Where we are right now at the moment, a Japanese government has adopted so-called new economy policy, maybe named Abenomics. What is it? It's like print more money and they provide the money to the market. Why? They want to escape from the deflation, 20 years deflation through the monetary policy. In other words, that means that they want to weaken, devalue the Japanese yen, which will be very important to increase their exports. Through exports, they want to revitalize their domestic economy. How about China? Actually, Chinese government has devalued its currency over the last 2 or 3 years very much. So what can you do? The Korean industries have lost competitive advantages and price competitive advantages in a market, global market, because of these policies adopted by Japanese government and Chinese government. And what can you do? We have to compete with them. So Korean government has adopted a low interest rate policy, but as I explained before, they have they consider very seriously to lower interest rate further. I think that we cannot deny that Korean government even consider negative interest rate policy. So this one is very, very important. And then I think if Korea is in such a kind of situation, why not for the USA government? Maybe if the Korean government became a sort of target, why not? There are enough reasons why the Americans try to take a retaliatory action against Korean government and Korean industries.
Korea, Japan, and China are being pointed out as the main targets of this amendment.
Yes.
So in this time of global monetary easing, what can Korea do to pep up its economy?
Definitely, as I said before, considering Korean economic structure, we have relied on the external trade very much. Out of total GNP, about more than half came from the external relations. So the one most important thing is to how we can keep the competitive advantages of our exporting industries. Well, as I said before, to do that, our currency value should be appropriate level. Otherwise, we will lose our export ratio in the global market. That can be a fatal blow against the Korean economy. And second one is actually we do not have enough foreign reserves. I mean, since 1997, when we was hit by the financial crisis, Korean government recognized the importance of the foreign reserves. So we have maintained the huge amount of the foreign reserves. But I think at the moment, I mean, over the last several the months, the Korean, the Federal Reserves we have had reduced dramatically. So I think we can say that the foreign reserves we have is not big enough to have the kind of some bumper zone to overcome the imminent the economic difficulties. I think foreign reserve is very important. So the government should have to make every effort to increase the foreign reserves that we have. And lastly, I think the most important thing is that we have to make every effort to attract the foreign direct investment, or at the same time we have to encourage the Korean companies to increase their investment. As far as I know, according to report, about 472 trillion wons are in the pockets of the big conglomerate in Korea. They are hesitating to make investments. So Korean government should have to make every effort to make them the investment. I mean, them means that the domestic companies, and also at the same time we have to attract more foreign direct investment through by the efforts such as deregulations and improve the business circumstances in Korea. Why they are important? If the more money come into Korea, I think the so-called positive circle can be started. If the more money come into here in the form of investment, the more money will go to the producers, private sector. If the producers can make more money and then can revitalize their domestic, the procedures and production procedures, then the workers can get more money, and if they get more money, they can spend more money, and then the positive circle can be started.
Hope our financial policymakers out there are listening. And finally, we turn to Korea-Japan relations. At the center of attention is Dokdo once again. Tokyo recently gave the green light to high school textbooks that include territorial claims over the Korean islets. Textbooks also adopted a more ambiguous language in their descriptions of military sexual slavery by Japan. The Korean government summoned a minister from the Japanese embassy in protest. Well, here's a look at some of the problematic phrases in these textbooks.
Of the 35 social studies textbooks that were greenlit by the Japanese government, 27, or over 77%, claimed Korea's Dokdo as being Japanese territory. This is a step up from the some 54% of 39 textbooks that made this argument back in 2013. Looking at the textbooks in detail, they show a general rise in claims that Dokdo is Japan's sovereign territory and that Korea has been illegally occupying the islets. In terms of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, some publishers omitted the military's involvement or left out accounts of sexual slavery altogether.
So it's like one step forward and two steps back when it comes to Korea-Japan relations. What are your thoughts, Professor Park?
I think that the paramount necessity of the cooperation between two countries is the North Korean nuclear weapons. North Korea can attack South Korea and Japan also. Without close cooperation, we cannot defend our country and Japanese people. Because this kind of necessity, I think that South Korea and Japan should cooperate with each other. So the government should try to kind of divide the security and cooperation issues from the historical issues. But at the same time, I think that peoples in South Korea and Japan also should try to more. We should try not to be too emotional and leave resolution process to the long flow of the history in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this happened just as Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo were trying to strengthen their cooperation with regards to the North Korean nuclear threat.
Let me tell you this one first. I think the relationship between Korea and Japan is like we maintain the relations, but it is not based on mutual trust. So I think it can be collapsed by any very small the attack or small issues. I think this is the very regret to see it. Of course, we can say this is the whose responsibility. I think that that can be a very important thing, but at the moment, what is most important thing is how we can build a mutual trust, which can be the foundations for the desirable diplomatic relations between two countries. Mm-hmm. As Professor Park emphasized that we need the Japan and Japan needs Korea in terms of the, in considerations of the political or security considerations as well as economic considerations. And the second one is actually about, you raised the Tokto issue. I think when I was students and graduate school students, I had the chance to take the courses. There was the courses in the UK, and there was the law class, international sea law class. And then according to the professor, he said that, well, I raised the same question, and then he said that, well, I think he said that he did not know very well about this issue, but if you have enough historical the materials which can prove that Tokto is belonging to Korea, then why you do not prepare for some actions? I think that he supported for more active measures. But I think this is time. Already the government has been very patient in responding to Japanese provocative measures, in terms of the Tokto issue. But I think the Japanese government has been very actively, they set up some campaigning about the Tokto, not only in the domestic level but also internationally. If we keep silent, I think that people will say that, oh, maybe Tokto is the Japanese territory.
Well, that was Seoul's position for a long time, though. Seoul thought it would be better to just leave the matter out of, away from public discourse. It is ours. We don't have to assert the fact that it is ours when it is ours. That was Seoul's position,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But Japan keeps stepping up its campaign.
But I do not like the Seoul's responses in dealing with the Tokto issues. Then whenever Japanese government made some provocative action in dealing with Tokto issues, what Seoul did was that they just officially called for the ambassador or to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They complain about it officially. What else? You know what I mean? The options available to Korea is that to keep silence or take the very active measures against the Japanese, the trial. But I think, if I dare to say, the Korean responses has been not very clear. Just walking in the middle. So people, including myself, were very curious. What is the official, the stance of the Seoul toward the Tokto issue? They said that this is ours, but what kind of measures they have made? I think personally it was not enough.
So you're in support of Seoul taking more action, a more active campaign to assert its claims over Tokto?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have to wrap up our discussion for today. So if there are any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
I think we are standing at junction. Depending on how we, prepare. Well, economically, we can overcome the economic difficulties, or we will fail to overcome the economic difficulties. I think this is the very important moment we are standing at. So I think the government should prepare very well to decide the economic policies for the future of the Korean economy. I think this is a very important moment.
Professor Park?
Yes, many people say that good words, it's don't worry, be happy. But if our generation do not worry, our next generation will not be happy. So in order to make our next generation happy, I think that we should worry about nuclear issues, about the kind of economic situation, and about the international relations with Japan.
That's why we're here. To worry about things. Well, thank you two very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Yes, thank you.
And that is all for this edition of News Inside. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more next week.